Hello everyone, hope you're having the most amazing day today. Welcome to the Film Insight channel. For today's video, we're going to discuss some of the absolute worst restaurants featured on Kitchen Nightmares and review how they're doing now. So, sit back, relax, and without further ado, let's get right into the content, guys. Amy's Baking Company. In the 6th season of the show, Gordon Ramsay pays a visit to the now infamous Amy's Baking Company, hoping to rescue it from closure. Owned by Sammy Buzaglo and his very pleasant wife Amy, they've spent over $1 million trying to fulfill their dream of owning a restaurant. While Sammy runs the front of house, Amy takes charge of the kitchen and helps out with some of the cooking. Even though things were running out just fine in the beginning, business dwindled over time as they started getting poor reviews. This was mostly due to the fact that Sammy would get very defensive and downright aggressive to anyone who insulted his wife's cooking. He would reportedly tell people to leave for making fair criticisms about the piss-poor meals they were being served. Anyway, upon Ramsay's eventual arrival to the restaurant, he's initially impressed with how good the pastries on display look. Heading into the kitchen, he notices that it's completely sterilized, almost as if they were going to be performing a surgery. Wanting to sample some of the food, he tries a slice of Amy's cake, which he surprisingly brands as delicious. Soon after, an employee named Miranda reveals that she doesn't get any tips since Sammy takes them all for himself. Despite the fact that this is such a scummy thing to do and shouldn't be justified whatsoever, Sammy defends himself by saying that he does most of the work. Ordering some pizza, burgers, and red pepper ravioli, Ramsay's completely disgusted with what he's served. The pizza dough is practically raw, the burger buns are soaked in grease, and the ravioli has a putrid smell. Observing the dinner service, Ramsay's put in a state of awe witnessing Amy continuously deny that her food is bad to the customers who complain. Worst of all, Amy tries firing an employee named Katie for simply asking a question, to which Sammy tries to stop her from doing so. Although Katie justifiably decides to quit due to their mistreatment and calls the owners poisonous vipers. A while later, Amy has a temper tantrum over a glass of water and places the blame on Ramsay for some reason for disrupting the service. By the end of the episode, Ramsay concludes that the owners are too far gone to be helped and just leaves, canceling the rescue. Post Kitchen Nightmares, the restaurant and its owners have gone through so much it's fascinating. For one, the restaurant temporarily closed down for reasons that are unclear, but then reopened in May of 2013. One of the employees mentioned earlier, named Miranda, was fired for hiding a tip a customer had discreetly given her, which is beyond ridiculous. Thanks to the very revealing coverage in the episode and their actions following the show, the owners received a ton of negative backlash. To respond to these comments, the owners made a ton of abusive and insulting posts, but ended up regretting it and claimed that they were being hacked. Yeah, right. According to certain reports, it was revealed that both owners unsurprisingly had run-ins with the law. Amy was convicted for social security fraud to get credit, while Sammy had drug and trafficking charges. At a certain point, the owners began to sell merch with different catchphrases from the show, but they're no longer available. After the restaurant closed down in 2015 due to problems with the landlord, the couple eventually moved to Israel. Hilariously, in another video on the channel where we discussed Amy in the restaurant, an account named Amy Buzaglo made insulting remarks and argued with the other viewers in the comments. Whether it's an official account is up to you to decide, but it does seem to have unseen videos of Amy baking pastries and playing with her cats, so anything is possible. Old Neighborhood Restaurant. For a Season 7 episode, Gordon Ramsay heads over to the failing Old Neighborhood Restaurant to rescue it from closure. Run and owned by a married couple named Randy and Alexa, they purchased it several decades ago. For the first 13 years of business, things were performing generally well, although nowadays their profits are abysmal. It seems like this is in part due to the fact that the food quality is degraded over time and the items on the menu are too odd for many of the customers. Additionally, the decor is heavily dated, the wallpaper and furniture is falling apart, and the place is cluttered due to Randy's hoarding problem. Being in a deep pool of debt, they call out to a professional like Ramsay for some much needed guidance. When he finally arrives, the Kitchen Nightmares host is greeted by a mannequin dressed in weird clothing at the reception. Meeting with Randy, he learns that his wife Alexa named the mannequin Fiona and frequently changes her clothes. Weird. Asking about the last time they updated the menu, they said it's around 8 months to a year ago when it's really been closer to 2.5. Sitting down to place an order for dinner, Ramsay's served by a very lovely waitress named Kristen. Curious about the odd smell in the air, he asks where it's coming from and it's revealed that it's emitting from the upholstery of the chairs. What's worse, there are tons of flies around the restaurant and the chairs have wheels so they often roll around. While waiting for his order of New Orleans barbecue shrimp, Yucatan sea scallops, and a salmon special, Ramsay learns some very shocking news. The staff isn't able to remove items from the menu that have been there for over 30 years since the owners are clearly incapable of letting go. Predictably, the food comes back being either drenched in sauce or tasting dry, freezer burnt, or just nasty. Returning for the evening service, Ramsay inspects around and finds tons of disgusting things like old candy, heaps of dirt, and rat droppings. Taking a look at the office, he notices that it's extremely cluttered and sees old equipment hoarded outside that's supposedly going to be used as spare parts. Finding a rat corpse in the cleaning cupboard and realizing that everything in the kitchen is being cross-contaminated, Ramsay just forces the kitchen to close down. After a lot of discussion, cleaning, decluttering, and $60,000+ of revamping, the restaurant was given a worthy second chance. Following their appearance on Kitchen Nightmares, sales certainly improved and Randy's hoarding was no longer in the restaurant. However, a while after the show aired, the reviews they received on Yelp seemed to be pretty mixed. Most of the negative reviews criticized the service quality and how the food was often undercooked. TripAdvisor oddly had mostly positive reviews, but the negative ones were practically the same as on Yelp. 36 years after opening, Old Neighborhood Restaurant closed down in May of 2016, which was pretty expected. In its place opened a restaurant called The Butchery, which has a solid 4 stars on Yelp due to their fresh and delicious food. Mama Rita's. Gordon Ramsay heads over to Mama Rita's in a season 3 episode with the intention of bringing it back on its feet. Owned by Laura Papenfis, she decided to open a Mexican restaurant naming it after her late grandmother. While the business initially focused on catering, customers advised her to open a restaurant since her cooking and reputation were both great. Even though the first week went well and yielded tons of profit, the subsequent weeks were nowhere near as successful and the restaurant began to struggle. Being $2.2 million in debt and at risk of losing not only her business but her home as well, Laura reached out to Ramsay for some help. Upon the famous chef's arrival to Mama Rita's, he's greeted by a hostess named Maggie, who's also Laura's mother, and expresses how he's confused by the name. At the very least, Ramsay admits that the decor is stunning and then sits down to taste test some of the food. Introduced to a waiter named Brad, he goes over the menu and advises the host on what dishes not to order since some of them are really dry. Ordering some tamales that are soaking wet, chimichangas that are filled with dry chicken, and a burrito that is completely soggy, Ramsay's repulsed with his meals. Heading into the kitchen to meet the staff, Ramsay is given a shocking revelation about the food and it becomes clear why the place is failing. They cook all their food in large batches, freeze them in portions, and steam them for each order. Deciding to observe the dinner service, food seems to fly out of the kitchen quickly, but the customers are not satisfied with their meals. It doesn't come to much of a surprise since they're basically serving them the equivalent of TV dinners. Later on, Ramsay pulls out tons of trays of frozen food from the freezer and compares the restaurant to a factory processing plant. Having over $12,000 worth of frozen food, the Kitchen Nightmares host is shocked to see that some of the trays date as far back as a year ago. Despite this, Laura still claims that her food is delicious, so Ramsay tries to give her a reality check. Bringing in some former customers, they express that the service quality wasn't what they expected and that the food was just uninspired. Finally opening her eyes, the owner admits that she hasn't been delivering quality food to her patrons, but vowed to change this. After revamping the menu with the help of chef Neris Maradosian, the restaurant was finally able to relaunch. Weeks after Ramsay and his team left, Laura made the smart decision of reverting back to the old menu, removing one of the only major changes made. Regardless of this, the restaurant still managed to get some good reviews on Yelp, with only a handful of negative ones. Unsurprisingly though, the restaurant closed down in December of 2010, but Laura continued to offer catering services for a number of years. Down the line, she became the manager of a place called Mission Oaks Cafe, which has average reviews on Yelp. This business closed down as well in June of 2019, but the reason isn't exactly clear. If only she just stuck to Ramsay's professional advice. Well, that'll be all for today's video here on the channel. I do hope you enjoyed, and if you did, be sure to drop a massive like down below and comment your thoughts. Subscribe for more content like this and turn on those sweet bell notifications for instant access to our content. Have a good one, guys.